In December, I took my 11-year-old daughter to go ice skating at Bryant Park in New York. And we're going around the rink, and there's music and lots of people. And suddenly there's a commotion on the ice. I look over, and about 30 feet away, there's a guy, and he's gone down on one knee. And he's looking up. He's clearly just proposed. And everybody has stopped, and they're looking at her. And we can see, we can feel her emotions as she goes from shock and disbelief to happiness and radiant love. She says yes. And we all cheer. I still get goosebumps thinking about it. Did you feel it? Maybe you've actually been and you've seen a proposal too. And if you have, do you remember that joy, that shared excitement? Or maybe you were feeling the anxiety of the guy who was down on one knee. That's empathy. Empathy is being able to put ourselves in somebody else's shoes and feel what they are going through. And I shared that event because it really puts us into the shoes of somebody else. And I deliberately triggered the mirror neurons in your brains that Sean Anker actually spoke about yesterday. Because when they are activated, we actually go through, we mimic to some degree what the other person is feeling like. And that's empathy. We are empathetic beings. We care about each other and people we don't even know, like the people at the ice rink. And when we feel empathy for other people, it makes a big difference. I feel a lot of empathy for you because I'm the one standing between you and a drink at the end of a really great day. But empathy has been missing from the workplace. I was speaking recently with Anita, a senior HR executive, and she was asking me, how can I make my 100 middle managers treat their team members more like human beings? Those were her exact words. We have not been using empathy in the workplace, and our relationships, our productivity, and our results have suffered. But what am I doing here talking to you about empathy? I'm a Brit. I come from a land of stiff upper lips. It is a national policy to squash our emotions, keep calm, and carry on. But I expanded my capacity for empathy by living and working in 5 different countries. And I spent time and energy putting myself in other people's shoes so I could understand what they were going through, so that I could adapt and thrive. I've worked by far the longest in this country now. And on the one hand, the openness to new ideas and opportunities is exciting. But on the other hand, people are regularly expected to work way beyond the 40-hour work week, and regularly at weekends. And hundreds of millions of vacation days go unused every year. It's a tough, pretty unempathetic workplace. 18 months ago, I was having lunch with a friend of mine, Laura. She's a VP at an innovation shop. She's a breadwinner for her family. She has a 9-year-old kid. And she was explaining that she'd been diagnosed with late-stage cancer. And she was worried about losing her job. She needed the health care. She talked to her boss so that she could have some flexibility and she'd be able to do the chemo and then be able to work from home a bit. But HR pushed back, complaining, what about other people wanting the same kind of flexibility that you do? Wow. The thing is, I don't actually think that Laura's boss or HR or Anita's managers are bad people. I don't think they treat people like that in their personal lives. This isn't personal, this is business. But maybe you've had a thoughtless or unfeeling boss or colleague, and maybe that made you feel, maybe dread coming to work, or at least your engagement went down. So why would we treat people without empathy in the workplace? Is it the transactional nature of work, that we're being paid? And for 100 years, we have thought that money was everything. Money was the sole motivator. And it kind of worked for a while. There were sort of unappealing jobs, long hours, arm's length relationships, and that was balanced by payment and long-term job security. But then after the mass layoffs in the 1980s and 90s, any semblance of empathy, any sense of that balance went away. And money isn't everything. We know that. Money isn't enough. In October, Jeff, who is a senior executive at a creative agency, he was telling me about a new hire, Mark, who had just turned down a $5,000 signing bonus that they have to try and keep new hires to stay for 2 years, to commit to 2 years. And Mark turned it down. He said, I'm not a flake, I'm not going to bail. He just wanted to keep his options open. He wanted control over his destiny. But it isn't just control people want. There's flexibility, inclusion, purpose. There are lots of other factors now that we know are impacting how people are attracted, engaged, and retained in the workplace. And we're starting to adapt. We're understanding that workplace is evolving. But among all this evolution, much more is disrupting the business environment. And that's technology. Technology is changing the game for all of us. As an accelerator, a catalyst, a driver, an enabler, a supporter of change. The substance and nature of how we relate to each other, the means and modes by which we interact, it's all radically changing. We are connected to each other and 10 billion things. And boundaries are blurred between you and me, work and play, virtual and real, jobs, and even companies. And everything has sped up a lot. The average length of time a company used to be on the S&P 500 was 50 years, and now it is 15 and decreasing. Companies are having to transform themselves, as Don Price said, or disrupt themselves in order to stay competitive. And if not, they face a distinct possibility of going out of business. Polaroid is a perfect example, and the struggles that GE is going through are the same. But what about you? How is technology changing how and where and when you do work? Work used to be, in the past, we used to be able to predict 12 months ahead what we would be doing. It was structured and linear. And now, it is much more fluid, less predictable, and iterative. So things are changing. There are unintended consequences. For leadership, the sort of command and control that we've known for a century, the instructions that came from the top, that's too slow, too linear. As teams and managers, we need to be able to be responsive and flexible. And the consequence is that now leaders are now needing to push responsibility down and out through the organization so people closer to the front line can make timely and informed decisions. We all need to be able to work closely together in our teams and be able to collaborate well. And that happens when trust can build. The consequence is that employers need to nurture cultures that are helping people feel safe, be able to take risks and speak up. Tom is a 28-year-old guy, and he was working at a company where he liked what he was doing, but he felt some of the things, the ways that the place operated did not sit well with him, and he wanted to say something and improve it. But he realized he didn't think he could say anything without being fired. Consequence? He went and found another job, a place where he did feel that he could feel trusted and safe and be able to speak up. And he told his boss just before he left, who rallied to try and get him to stay, but it was too late. He was gone. And yet employers want their employees to stay. They want their commitment and loyalty, while employees are all too aware of the lack of job security these days. And the consequence? Loyalty is being redefined. Employees are looking for employers to show their commitment to their future, such as upskilling, to help them stay relevant in the future. These unintended consequences, we need new approaches to be able to work together effectively. But it's not just about leadership or culture or loyalty. And this is actually a picture I took on a plane, the woman who was sitting next to me, this is how she was working. We need different approaches in order to be able to work together, to understand and be understood and be effective. Empathy is the skill that you need. I was advising a woman, Sam. She's the CEO of a toxic waste cleanup company. She was having a lot of issues, intergenerational issues that were causing conflict, and which was impacting productivity and the culture. She said, she tells me straight up, we were trying to bend our millennials to our boomer way of doing things, and it simply wasn't working. So she and I focused on empathizing with all the employees' perspectives, including the millennials. And she started to feel and understand what they were challenged by, what they were going through, what they wanted, what they were looking for. She started to sense their discomfort because they didn't feel included or valued, even though they were the ones typically at the front line cleaning up the dangerous spills. She tuned into their frustration, that they had good ideas and great customer feedback that wasn't being heard. And she also understood that they actually were interested in more explicit direction. They were eager to learn and grow. And taking an empathetic approach, she appointed, there was a young emerging leader, and she put him on the leadership committee, which is a sort of leader of all the leaders of the company sat on it. It was a forum for exchanging information. And she also introduced frequent check-ins, particularly for the younger employees, to help coach and nurture them and develop their potential. And the consequence was that the communications between the generations improved significantly. The productivity went up, and the culture has never been better. So empathy helps us understand that work is not just a transaction. That's not a sustainable approach. Empathy helps us deepen our relationships and build trust. Empathy helps us change the relationships that we have with each other, particularly important if we're working with remote teams. How else are you going to understand if something's up with someone? Are they struggling with a project? Or perhaps they have a personal situation, or maybe they just need more technical assistance. If you can empathize, you can understand what kind of support that they need. A very large company, CVS Health, actually takes this mindset and approach and applies it to how they manage people. They call it leading with heart. And it doesn't mean that they coddle their employees, far from it. They expect a lot. But when somebody doesn't meet their objectives, their reaction is thoughtful support. What's going on? How can I help? I know that you can do better. They believe in treating their employees like human beings, and CVS Health estimates that their focus on purpose and empathy adds an additional $30 billion to the bottom line. So why is empathy the essential piece of the puzzle? Why is empathy and empathizing with your colleagues, putting yourself in their shoes, why is that going to be the way that your business can succeed under these new conditions? Okay, so we're going to do an exercise, wake you all up, and help everybody understand how impactful empathy is. So I want everybody to think of a situation that happened to them over the last 4 to 6 weeks, something that was difficult, a difficult client interaction, a customer who didn't sign on, a challenge that you had with your boss, or a difficult conversation, and something that you can share with somebody you've never met. Okay? Thought of it? Okay. All right, now you've got to get into pairs. Pairs, the person next to you, close to you. Come on. All right, does everybody have somebody that they're working with? All right. Okay, so you're going to take it in turns. You're going to have 60 seconds each. And the first person with the shortest hair is going to go first. Shortest hair. And if you have the same length hair, then the person who's sitting on that side. Okay, now the other person is going to listen, and then the first person's going to share, and then the other person is going to listen, but, and then you're going to swap, but, and this is a big but, the person who's listening cannot react at all. Not at all. No, oh yeah, oh, no emotions, no reactions, stone-faced cold, that's it, okay? Ready? Go. 60 seconds. No reacting, people. Stone-faced. No nodding, no reacting. Come on. Okay, okay. All right, now we're going to swap the other person. Okay, the other person is sharing, and the person who's listening now, no reacting at all. I saw some people cheating, and some people, none of that. No reaction at all, please, okay? Go. Okay. So how was that? How did that feel? If you were the one, when you were the one talking, how did that feel in terms of getting no reaction? How much did you want the other person to recognize what you were saying, what you were going through emotionally? And then when you were listening, how hard was that? Not to actually react, not to respond, and go, yeah, oh. It's surprisingly tough, right? Let's just recognize how empathetic we are. We are human, we are empathetic beings. And being empathetic does not mean being a pushover. It does not mean not competing at the highest levels. Empathy is called a soft skill, but it's actually what makes us stronger. It is the absence of empathy in the workplace that has, and working against our human nature, that has caused all kinds of issues. So how does empathy work, and how does it make that difference? There are three components: think, feel, and do. Think is first, and that is thinking or cognitive empathy. It is recognizing that the other person has their own way of seeing, of thinking about the world. And you actively recognizing, using your imagination and curiosity to consider their point of view. It's like if you're going to buy a gift for a relative and you think about what they would love. And then feel. Feel is affective empathy. It's that shared emotional response. It's you're feeling it, you're in it with them. It's when you identify something that you think your mother would love. You're like, yes, she's going to love that. Excellent. Or when you have a friend who's going through a bad breakup, and you can actually feel some of their emotional pain. Affective empathy actually works with strangers too, like the couple at the ice rink. And then do. What do we do as a result? It's working with empathy, empathetic action. What do we do based on that understanding that we have? We buy the little green vase for our mother that she would love. We comfort our friend, we take them to the movies. And we go through that process multiple times every day in our personal lives. We think about how somebody else is thinking, their perspective. We feel what they're experiencing, and we do something as a result. We are empathetic beings. But what if you could expand your capacity for empathy? You can learn to expand and apply your empathy in the workplace. Sean Aker actually mentioned this study, which was done with some doctors, and they actually went through 3 hours of empathy training. And then they went back and they went on their rounds. And their patients felt more at ease and better cared for. We can think about empathy as a muscle that we focus, that we sort of flex, and as we exercise it, we can strengthen it and apply it into the workplace for benefit. So there are 2 steps: recognize and apply. Recognize, and we go through the aspects of think, feel, and do. I think about how my daughter is doing when she comes in for breakfast in the morning. I feel, is she anxious? Is she tired? Maybe she has a test at school. And then I do change my interactions so that she can be sent off on her way to school and have a good day. And when you recognize somebody else, a colleague has a different perspective from you. Maybe they are a World of Warcraft person and you're Call of Duty. Maybe they like bikes and you love cars. Maybe they're going to get a kitten and you're a dog person. This is where you can grow, because when you understand that they have a different perspective, you can push yourself to understand their point of view. You don't have to agree with it, but just try and understand where they're coming from. And then it's a question of feeling what emotion it is that they have in that different perspective. And this is where we use observation to try and actually work out what emotion it is. And we check by asking. So, for example, this woman here, what emotion is she feeling? Is she angry? Is she confused? Or does she have indigestion? We actually use our observation and decode this subconsciously. We use these clues to try and work out. We use the facial expression, and this is why remote working, it's really important to use video where you can, so you have more clues. From the voice, you can listen to the intonations and hesitations, and listen to the words and phrases that people use. And using those clues, you can figure out and practice working out what kind of emotion people are feeling, and do check. And some people are definitely harder to read, and they may be Brits. But there are resources that there are books and tests that you can take to check how well you actually recognize people's emotions from their facial expressions. And when you do recognize what emotion that is, and then you recognize that you're feeling it, maybe you're in with the excitement of that game, or feeling the thrill of the bike ride, or the joy of that little kid. It's like when we get carried away in movies or TV shows or sports games, right? And when you feel that emotion rising within you, ride with it deliberately. And it doesn't have to be how you would feel. It may well not be, but that doesn't matter here, because you're putting yourself in their shoes. You're consciously connecting with their sensation. And in doing that deliberately, you are purposefully increasing your capacity to empathize. And then what do you do as a result? How do you act? When you consciously are aware of their emotions, and perspectives. What do? Do you try that video game again? Do you look at bikers with a whole new perspective? Or do you buy a cute little toy for their kitten? So you can imagine how much empathy could impact how you work with your teams. And we must also recognize what can get in the way of us actually being able to connect with people's perspectives and emotions. And that's typically our own judgments. They can block us, particularly if we wouldn't feel the same way about something or we don't understand their perspective. So it's worth really trying to connect. We're trying to consciously remember that it's not about you or me, it's about them. In June, my mother's car was smashed in overnight by a passing car. And when talking to her about it the next day, I judged her. I thought she was overreacting. It looked like it could drive. She wasn't hurt, and my sister and I had offered to pay for the repairs. But it took me a while to understand how upset she was. And when I started to understand it wasn't about the dented car wing at all. That car gave her the freedom to go to visit her friends, to go to her yoga and painting classes. So she was responding, she was reacting to the fact that she might be cut off from her community. So when we can put aside our judgments and reactions and focus on the other person, when we can bring an open mind, and when we can realize that it's about what they are experiencing. Oh, that's why she reacted like that? Okay. Then we can connect better and empathize. So, how are we going to apply empathy in the workplace? Well, we start with a good foundation. And empathy comes most easily when you can relate to the other person. And with friends and family, you have common ground, you have shared experiences, so you probably have a good idea of how they might feel or think about something. But what happens about when the people you don't know as well? And I was in the gym a couple of weeks ago, and one guy goes up to the other person, totally randomly, and he has a Basketball Hall of Famer t-shirt on. And they clearly are huge fans of the same guy. And after a brief animated conversation, they hug, high five, and go their separate ways. Two complete strangers, suddenly, through their mutual admiration of this player, had created this amazing common bond. If those two now had to work together on a project, that bond would really help them overcome differences of opinions and collaborate well. So making these kind of connections in the workplace is really important. Whether you do it, you're understanding people's likes and dislikes, and you can make those connections by the water cooler. You can go for lunch together, or have happy hour over video chat. And I'm serious, it's actually a lot of fun. Time zones can get in the way, but it's a lot of fun. You can connect over TV shows, or mother-in-law stories, or, sports teams, whatever it might be that's going to help you relate better to the other person and be able to recognize their emotions and understand what they're going through, and it will all come more easily. So, how and when do we apply these skills? Think, feel, do in our interactions. Empathy is applicable for every interaction and communication. With your boss, with your teams, and with your colleagues, any of the colleagues around. Virtually and in person, wherever people are. Live and in writing, whatever medium you're using. If you take the time and make the effort to master empathy, you and your team will be able to operate at the highest levels. You'll be more aware. You'll be more present, and you'll have a direct connection with the person that you're working with. And so if you think, who is this person that I'm dealing with? What do I know about them? How do they view the world in this project? And what common ground do we connect on? And then feel. When you're about to start a meeting or a call, try and check in with the other person and see what emotional state that they're in. And then when you're interacting, really active listening helps. Observe carefully, look for all those, using video, look for all the clues that you can. Listen to the voice. And you can ask questions and restate what they've said so you're sure about what they meant. And then do things differently based on all of that understanding. Whatever medium you're responding in, make those adjustments based on what you understand. When you're more present, when you're more aware, you will be more productive. And whatever role you have in your team, having those direct connections, it is your responsibility as you're using empathy to make everybody feel safe so that you can collaborate well. The more you're able to apply these skills and become accustomed to thinking about other people's points of view, to feeling what they're going through, and to doing things differently, your communications will be that much smoother. Your collaboration will be more productive, and the conflict will be more easily resolved. And you'll even be able to encourage people to act in similar ways. Empathy is more vital in the workplace than it's ever been. We have fewer built-in opportunities to connect and interact at a deeper level. And empathy hasn't been, we're not used to using it in the workplace, so it can take proactive attention and conscious adoption. But you've got this. You've got this. Working with empathy isn't hard. Working without it is. It's up to us to connect, to listen, to share. It is those shared moments and memories. It is those highs and lows. That's what gets us through the bad times and makes the great times. It's up to us to embrace empathy and practice it every day at work. Empathy is important in our personal lives and essential in our professional lives as well. It is the key skill that you need and that's going to contribute to your success and your team's. It's up to us to think it, feel it, and do it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Sophie Wade.
And if you're interested for any of the resources I talked about and the empathy tests that I mentioned, if you text to this number, I can send that to you. Okay?
Great. Thank you very much. And that's it for today for the Future Work track. And so we've got a very packed day tomorrow, so see you then. Thank you.